You got barbecue back there, and you didn't invite me. Hurt my feelings.
While free agency is winding down, you go over to ddfantasyfootball.com, use code THEORY, get in the Discord, use the War Machine, use the Trinity tool, use my cross-positional tiers, code THEORY, link below, get 50% off your first month. So like I said, while free agency is winding down, if you look at a lot of the trades still going through and the most traded players, Mitch, it's players that were involved with free agency, players that were switching teams, players where their role may have been impacted because of something else we saw. So we want to run through 8 players. They're those big bubbles on dynastydaddy.com in the trade database. They're the guys that are moving across the board. And all we want to do right now is set that baseline for each one. So where they are on Fantasy Calc, their pick equivalent, are we looking at them and are we willing to move that pick, or is it going to be higher or lower? And Mitch, we see this all the time when there are players that have these changing situations. They're the most traded players. The wide range of trade values we see, because the dust is not settled. And I really don't think it's settled on these players. We're still going to see some movement. So I'm going to throw you to the test here. We're going to get right into it. DK Metcalf on Fantasy Calc, wide receiver 21, the pick equivalent of 107 in 12-team Superflex formats. Is that fair? Is that too high? Too low? How do you look at DK Metcalf here for the Pittsburgh Steelers?
To me, I want that 107. Like, until they end up moving off of George Pickens, I can't buy into Metcalf. If Pickens is on the team, I don't want to buy into either of them. I don't believe Arthur Smith is ever going to be a pass-first head coach. I don't care if they're down by 30 points. I just don't think he's going to do it. So for me, it's this one is probably the easiest one on the list for me. That was just like, you know what? I cannot pay this price. And I haven't seen this price paid yet either.
Yeah, and it's funny because he is one of the most traded players still, and we've seen his value. It actually is kind of held. It hasn't really moved all that much lower, even with the move to Pittsburgh. Who's going to play quarterback? Yes, Mason Rudolph is here now again for stint number 2, but presumably, hopefully, as a backup. And then you mentioned George Pickens still in Pittsburgh as well. In 2 PPR settings for tight ends, I would move DK for the 111.
Oh, 100%. I would probably move him for any first round pick.
And then you start to get out to the 26, 27, and we talked about this in last week's show. The further out you go, yes, you got to wait a little bit longer, but there's potentially more variance and more time for things to go wrong for that manager. So you certainly could benefit there. So DK Metcalf, we're saying at his current price, don't look to invest.
No.
If the price drops even further, then maybe there's that opportunity. But if you can get out at his current price tag, that's where both of us are. And I'm interested to see, Mitch, how many players we actually align on tonight. Because, like I always say, we didn't share notes.
Nope. No notes.
We had little blurbs on the players we're going to talk about, and that's it. Davante Adams, Fantasy Calc wide receiver 38, at the young age of 32. He's valued at the 112 right now. Too high, too low?
See, I'm more than happy to buy here. More than happy to. And the reason is I think he's, like we said, DK Metcalf, the 107. You ask me right now who's scoring more points over the next 2 years is Davante Adams. And I'm willing to give odds on that, right? Because I think he's that good. He produces that much more. And he's going to be with Matthew Stafford. And Matthew Stafford makes great wide receivers, Hall of Fame wide receivers, right? I mean, Calvin Johnson, flat out stud. And they helped each other out. So for me, I'm 100% buying into Adams. The hard part is always giving up your first round pick for a 32-year-old wide receiver. But I believe in that offense so much that I'm more than willing to overlook it.
And something that you very well could do here, and there are some older players that we're going to talk about tonight, but Davante Adams being one of them. Yes, he's floating around that 112 value, but if you have somebody that's looking to enter a rebuild, or their tendencies, and once they hit the offseason, they're looking to unload veterans, I don't want to cop out here and say you could probably get him for a little bit less, but add some pieces so the value adds up. You might be able to, like, 203 and a third or something.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be trades like that go through, but do you think like DK Metcalf probably goes below wide receiver 21, and that's inclusive of incoming rookies? So all of this is going to be inclusive of incoming rookies. Do you think wide receiver 38 for Adams as the season approaches? I know we're 6 months away, but do you think we see that going higher or lower? Or is this strictly a invest in him type situation because you believe he's going to produce?
I think it comes down to one of the conversations, Scott Shane had a great conversation on this, is how much of Dynasty now is treated like redraft. Mm-hmm. I think the more people play best ball this summer, Davante Adams is going to go a lot higher than wide receiver 38, and that's going to play to help contenders want to build their teams going into the 25 season. So for me, I definitely think it's going to raise.
Next up, Cooper Kupp. Not much of a value difference. He's at wide receiver 46 on Fantasy Calc. And I like to use Fantasy Calc because it is based on actual trades that go through. I always say, yes, there's some funky trades going through, and that takes into account the value, obviously. And Keep Trade Cut has its strength because it's a very quick overreaction, sometimes a normal reaction to the way the market shifts, but it's not based on actual trades. Cooper Kupp, wide receiver 46, right around that 204. You made a comment earlier that he's washed.
I did. On the mock draft that we put out, it came out on Monday. It's on the live feed for anyone who wants to watch it. Dude hasn't been good since midway through the 2022 season. He's an average guy that is not worth a second round pick right now. It's off name value alone. He's not going to go in there and be the alpha. That's going to be JSN. More than likely they draft somebody. I see very, very little reason to buy into Cooper Kupp, mainly because he hasn't stayed healthy in 3 years either. Now all of a sudden you want to spend a second round pick on a 32-year-old wide receiver. Yeah, I'm out.
If that value difference is like wide receiver 38 to 46 and tying it back to Davante Adams, you can probably add a little bit to Cooper Kupp to get up to Davante Adams. But I will say, just like I mentioned with Davante Adams, if you have somebody looking to unload him, they're probably not going to be interested in acquiring another 32-year-old wide receiver. So an Adams for Kupp swap, it would have to be a very unique and specific situation. But I think the big thing here with Cooper Kupp, like you mentioned it, and in our mock draft based on landing spots in an NFL mock draft, it's like Inception, the mock draft based on a mock draft. But the Seahawks took Ted McMillan in the first round. Mm-hmm. And I think it's very reasonable to think that the Seahawks would invest in a wide receiver somewhat early in this year's NFL draft. And that would ultimately bring Cooper Kupp's value down a little bit more. You are quite smitten. You are a smitten kitten, Mitch.
I am, without a doubt.
With Justin Fields, Fantasy Calc value, quarterback 25, 26 years old, gets a new contract going to the New York Jets. He's valued right around the 109. Is that too high or too low?
I'm praying that's not his cost, because I don't have a lot of 109s and 110s that I'm willing to go out and trade for a quarterback.
Roll with 112s, of course.
Well, no, I'm just saying, like, if I'm in that position, I don't know how many teams I'm going to need Justin Fields on, because they probably already have their quarterback situations fixed. At that price point, I am more than happy to buy into him, because I kind of look at it as do you want Justin Fields or a Michael Penix or a Jackson Dart? They're all in that same value tier as far as like rookie draft picks go, right? So for me, I want Fields because he is going to produce on the field. I don't think there's a person out there that's going to go in the comments and be, hey, no, he's actually not going to produce for fantasy. We all know he's going to. So why not just, who knows? If he goes out and they go and have an 8-8 year, I guess it'd be 8-9 year, right? But they just put themselves, he's good enough to put them out of position for a really good pick, in my opinion. I do think the Jets have enough skill position players around him that I'm willing to buy into him. And I think that team's going to be too good to be picking in the top 5 of the NFL draft next year. And the quarterbacks aren't looking much better next year than what they are this year. So for me, I'm happy to buy into him here.
And again, it's an upside play. I think the 109 just...
It's tough.
It's a smidge too high for me, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
So this is probably the first real, discrepancy. But there is no arguing and no debate from me, at least, of Justin Fields not giving you that ceiling. And I'm over at dynastydaddy.com on their trade database. 27 first for Justin Fields, 107 for Fields and Ramondre, Fields for 26 first, Fields for a 201. Fields for Pittman and ETN. So you can see there is a little bit of variance, but overall it's in that ballpark. I think the move that makes sense, in my opinion, is somebody that is stacked elsewhere, and had to go on mute there for a second. Didn't want to hack up on our listeners, but stacked elsewhere, and maybe had a Derek Carr as their quarterback too or something, and they're just looking to upgrade for immediate production. Probably the case where it makes a lot more sense. But also, not to stick on Justin Fields for too long, in that mock draft we did that came out on Monday, Jackson Dart went super early to the Jets. Mm-hmm. Let's say they ignore quarterback and Justin Fields is going to get a real opportunity. It's not going to be like a Russ and Fields situation. It's not going to be a Penix and Kirk Cousins situation. He's going to get that shot. So going over Sam Darnold, one lower. What are your thoughts on him? And he's valued right at the 111.
I can't do it. The dude was sacked a lot with the Vikings. I think he goes to a worse offensive line. He's definitely going to... The coaching is not, the nice way to put it is the coaching is not as good in Seattle as it is with the Vikings. I think we can all fairly say that. I just think everything is a little bit less than it was with the Vikings. And he was just in such a great spot with the Vikings, that's why it worked out. And I've kind of always liked Sam Darnold. I always felt like he didn't really get a good shot everywhere he was. But even the Vikings, he went out and won 14 games for them. What did they do? I know they have McCarthy there, but they were more than happy just to let him leave. And they're like, no, we'll put McCarthy in. We're fine. Maybe that one playoff game we saw McCarthy was enough for them to be like, I say playoff game, that one preseason game with McCarthy was enough for them to be like, hey, that's all we need to see. I really think if Sam Darnold was that good of a quarterback that led that team to those wins, they would have tried to keep him for at least a year on the franchise tag. They chose not to. I think there's a reason why the Seahawks were able to go out and get him pretty much on a 1-year deal.
I think that at the respective prices, I would prefer Fields because we know what that ceiling is.
Oh, 100%.
And Sam Darnold ultimately has no more stability and a longer leash by any means than Justin Fields does here in 2025. Enough of the quarterbacks. We have 2 running backs we want to talk about. Najee Harris going to the Los Angeles Chargers on Fantasy Calc, valued at running back 24. He's 27 years old, gets a new lease on life, even though it's a 1-year deal. People seem to be very excited. Valued right around the 201. Is that too high or too low?
I think right now, I can't pay that price. After the draft, I'm more than happy to pay this price. I think Najee is a guy that could keep a rookie. We've talked about this a lot. He could keep a rookie off the field unless they go out in the second round and pick one of the really good rookies that we like. If they go out and pick Travion Henderson, I'm not going to be, hey, Najee Harris is keeping that dude off the field. I just don't see it happening. But if they end up waiting to the 3rd or 4th, and let's say it's a Dylan Sampson, a guy that I personally love, Najee Harris can keep him off the field for a year. If that happens, Sampson's price goes down. I get to play Najee all year in that offense. I'm more than happy to. So right now, I'm going to say it's too high. I won't pay it. But this is the perfect price point for me as soon as the draft is over and I don't have to worry about a whole bunch of competition there for him.
And I think it's going to be, I don't want to say double counted, but if the price tag is 201 now, if they don't take another running back, it's going to continue to go up. So
how high can it really go though? Like, are you going to see Najee Harris move for the 110, the 111? I don't know if you're actually going to see that.
no, but I think maybe 201 and somebody will kick a late second as well.
I could see that. Yeah.
So maybe getting there, but just not moving the first itself. But then looking at Najee some more, like it's the 1 year deal. We kind of know what he is. He's a volume dependent back, not overly efficient. Yes, there's were question marks in Pittsburgh with the offensive line and the scheme and the quarterback play. A lot of things on the offensive side of the ball, but I think it's an unnecessary risk because, like you said, how much more can it go up? Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe you got to kick back something later, but I don't see a reason to invest the 201, the 112 in a player like Najee Harris right now, because it's certainly one that his value is just predicated on the opportunity itself. And that value can go down more than it can go up because of what they do in the NFL draft. So running back 24, little bit too high for me. Actually, from a running back perspective, that's the tier I have him in.
Yes.
Look really quickly. But from a pick perspective, that's too much for me. Now, a much cheaper price tag, Jordan Mason, running back 49, going to the Minnesota Vikings, 26 years old. He's there 2 years. Would you move Jordan Mason for the 301 or vice versa? Would you move the 301 for Jordan Mason in 12-team Superflex formats?
Honestly, depending on how the draft goes, I don't think we're going to get 12 landing spots that we just love, right? I think there's a strong chance to where we love these running backs, but they're going to be in tough situations. And the one thing with Jordan Mason is I know he's a good running back. Aaron Jones probably isn't going to hold up. So I'm happy to buy in at this price. I think it's a very smart move to make, especially have Aaron Jones. This is one of those positions to where I want to have every back I can on the Vikings offense, because if one gets injured, we know the other one can get a lot of the workload. The offense is going to be good. I'm more than happy to buy into him here at the 301.
Not exactly the poster child for a clean bill of health, but when he's on the field, I think Jordan Mason could be effective. We saw the price tag that he was going for whenever Christian McCaffrey was out before he got injured. Right. And like you said, in this offense, we've seen worse players look pretty good at any position. So Jordan Mason at the 301, I think that's a perfectly fine price tag to look to invest, because there is that contingent upside if Aaron Jones were to miss time or even provide a 1-2 punch. Yeah, they could look to add somebody else in the NFL draft, and I think they would look at like a 6th, 7th round pick, but there was a 5th round pick in a pick swap or whatever the case was for acquiring Jordan Mason. So they obviously like him enough. But I think he's also, because of his price tag, a player that you could get added to a larger deal. And I don't know if it would necessarily ruin the deal from going through.
Oh, I completely agree with that.
So we wanted to go through, like I said, talking about those players that still are just being traded left and right, and certainly more so than others. And it's guys with new situations. It's exciting. It's different. It's the free agent trade activity that everybody loves. Everybody thinks they're getting out ahead of a certain price tag, and sometimes they're a little too early or they are too late, and they leave value on the table. And I think going through these 8 players, setting our baseline where we currently see them, where we could see their value going, is valuable insight. For Mitch Sorensen, I'm John Bauer. Make sure you go over to ddfantasyfootball.com, click the link below, use code Theory, get 50% off. You get the War Machine, the Trinity Tool, cross-positional tiers, and the Discord community, which has just been absolutely on fire this offseason, and it's going to be a lot of fun whenever the NFL draft gets here. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you next week. Peace.